And if we do it this way, this at least threatens to get rid of it. And hey, somehow we won that. That was a bad hand for us. Oh no. Piltover Zone, Elise, Kindred. This could even be Timeline's control, potentially. But we know what we're playing. And that's a Renekton deck. That's right. Hello and welcome to Croc Week. Monday through Friday this week, I have decided that we will be playing 5 different Renekton decks. But now we have a decision to make because this pushes more damage, but this gives us better long-term development. And this also survives Mystic Shot. It doesn't survive Beam if they run Beam, but this survives Mystic Shot, and we would like to start pushing some damage because the rest of our hand is kind of spell heavy. That's another reason I think to develop this. We're a bit spell heavy. We do also now have researchers to get going. I'm going to talk about the deck list like I always do at the end. Oh, wow. Production surge. Hello. Some hilarity there with the turrets. Yeah, we just eat this. I think we just eat this because we have spinner that we can use to turn this into a value trade this next round. But that's a great little stall tool there. Yeah, let's hit that. I guess. Clean some of this up.
This will be a good winter. These eyes see all.
I mean, this is going to get blocked, but we'd like to at least threaten the 5. Downside is this means this dies to a Mystic Shot now. But you know, that production surge was pretty solid for just gumming us up. So as I was starting to say, we're definitely going to talk about the deck list at the end, and I'll talk about why I like including the researchers here. I got a feeling that we're about to lose 2 units with Kindred coming down and them having mana. The Vile Feast is on the menu, and sadly we don't have our Troll Chance. We don't have any options. We have all of our combat tricks and none of the stuff that you traditionally want to use with them. What I mean by that is our overwhelm units. We don't have Renekton available. We don't have Ruin Runner, none of our Yetis. This has been a bit of an awkward start, and it continues to be so. Just all of our utility and none of the fun. Yeah, I think we do it like this and like this. Now, the downside is we really wish we had 1 more mana because Mystic Shot causes a lot of issues here, among other things, and they have a bajillion cards in hand, so I got a feeling this one's going to be over pretty quickly since we just don't have any ways to generate pressure. This is a matchup where we pretty desperately wanted to find a Ruin Runner and we just haven't found it. Now that might help this next round. We have to have units that make it that far. So here's the timelines, and could be timelines into Rekindler at 7. Interesting. Okay. So what are we worried about now? Something like Vengeance. We don't have enough to play the Fury and the Right. We could develop the Renekton, but then we run into other issues as well, and we cannot stop the combo when they hit 9. So I think we just have to go for it. We're just short a mana, unfortunately. So if they have the Vengeance, they have the Vengeance, but we will take the shot. That's a whale, which would put them at 1. I really can't predator here, huh? Well, what a shame. What a shame. So they go to 1, and then unless we get lucky and they whiff here on the Dreadway play. So there's the Dreadway. This could also low roll, or we could just Rite of Negation this. That seems fair. Develop a couple of extra threats here. Like you do. This is just the visual bug. Beam for 3 is interesting. That puts 2 on it. Oh, but it's okay, it's for 6.
We see through all.
Silly me for getting Dreadway's a thing. So here we just eat this. Or not. Or we don't eat this. We could develop the Ruin Runner because that survives Ruination. Gives them more opportunities to just burn us to death though, or play more things. So even though we would like to do this, I don't think that is a great option for us. So I think you do this. And if we do it this way, this at least threatens to get rid of it. And hey, somehow we won that. That was a bad hand for us. Let's go play another game, and then, as I always do at the end of the video, we'll talk about the deck list. But wow. Starting game 2 of day 1 of Croc Week, we continue trying to assert reptilian supremacy. And we are up against Misfortune Gangplank paired with Noxus. You have to assume this is just like Pirate Burn. We want to keep the early drop. The predict is also kind of nice. I think we'll keep the Yeti so that we get the 5/5 on 4. This gives us some flexibility, I guess.
Let's get it, Croc.
But our biggest issue here is we don't have a good way to gain health. So we are really relying on using our bodies to set up value trades. I'm actually going to go with the predict here, since we're not playing a spell this round anyway. Developing this isn't as important, and I want to tailor our draw. And so looking at this next round here, if we're going to develop this, having the chant is kind of nice for giving us a tool in terms of the blocking. They play the spider, will attack, but to finish that train of thought, sorry gang, our primary goal here is to use our big bodies to block as much as we can and conserve as much health as we can, because we don't have a way to gain health. Like, that's just not on the table here, and they're going to try to push us. So
On the trigger.
Fly away while you can.
this represents 2, so it's the same as blocking a spider basically, but this represents 2 even when they want to hold back for later. And so this has already got us down to 10. Now they're running out of cards, but they have a lot of burn in this list, and we still don't have great ways to deal with their wide presence. We're not exactly running Avalanche in our list, so now we have to make the decision about whether we want to go with the Yeti or the Spinner. I think in this case you want to go with the Spinner because we need to start forcing at least some trades. I think that is actually a big deal here. So like this can do this. We could even use a Predator to eat something, but I feel like if we do this and we use a Troll Chant, that's also fine. Troll Chant's just gonna eat a spider basically. Yeah, I guess we'll do it here.
This will be a good winter.
So our biggest concerns now are burn, because again we're at 10, and 10 is my nervous number, if that makes sense. Once I get to 10 or lower against burn decks, I start to get a wee bit nervous because it becomes that much easier for your opponent to start punishing you. This is a nice top deck because that means we can go 2 bodies wide instead of going with just the Ruin Runner, but we still have to deal with the open attack here, so that is problematic.
Let's not ruffle our feathers.
So we're gonna do this. We have to eat the 3. With a decimate at 5, for example, we would already be as low as 3.
Gotta go with the flow.
Zap is almost assuredly finding a fervor. Usually these lists only have like decimate and fervor as their options there, so we have to consider that as well. And that means that here we don't have enough for the Fury, but we do for the Sej. We need to get rid of the elusive unit. We might just already be dead, because if they have the decimate, then we're about to have a bad time. Yeah, I think you send that too. We need to start like counter threatening them to force them into some trades. Our window is pretty small here. Oh, okay. Somehow we're winning this. I am again shocked, pleasantly surprised. I'll happily go with 2 wins for today's video against unfavorable matchups, but we steal a win. And let's go take a look at this deck list. Again, day 1 of Croc Week. Day 1 of Croc Week is in the books, and so as always we're going to go through the list that I played today and talk about it. But since this is day 1 of Croc Week, I kind of wanted to expand on why I wanted to do it to begin with right out of the gate. And that's because now that we've had some time to play with Shurima, play with all the new champions, I have to say that Renekton is one of my favorite champions from a design standpoint from the new expansion, because he is a choose your own adventure champion. Our big reptilian overlord here does something kind of unique in that he benefits from something that is not on himself, not on the card. You think about champions like Teemo plants mushrooms, he levels up when you see mushrooms. You think about even champions like Ezreal benefits when you target things, but he gives you ways to create those targets. Some of the other champions that benefit from things are kind of vague, right? You think about like Heimerdinger or Lux, they just want you to play spells. Spells is very broad. You're not really encouraged to think about like how you solve that puzzle, right? But Renekton here gets a bonus whenever he challenges an enemy, and no version of Renekton naturally has challenger. So from a design standpoint, from a deck building standpoint, you say to yourself, well, how do I solve this puzzle? Now, there's plenty of ways to do that just in the Shurima region alone. But when you start thinking about other regions as well, there are some neat things that you can do. And so even if it's not in today's video, as we go through the week, some of the other regions, for example, have great ways to trigger Renekton outside of the standard Shurima ones. So with that in mind, let's go through the list, starting with Exhaust, which is part of that puzzle, right? Exhaust is a great way for Renekton to challenge something because Exhaust gives them vulnerable. It's very cost effective. Not quite burst speed. There is plenty of times I wish that this truly was burst and not focus, because it would be an insane combat trick if that were the case, but you still get a lot of value out of this. And it's worth noting now, I know we're at the front of the list, but we don't really have hard removal in this list. We don't even have soft removal in this list. There's no mystic shots. There's certainly no vengeances, anything like that. So you're relying on cards like Exhaust and Ruthless Predator and Sand Spinner, all of these vulnerable granting effects to serve as your removal. So when you're playing this, you have to keep that in mind, and you have to think about using those to dictate how you want trades to go, because that's the only way you're controlling the flow of combat is through those cards. So just keep that in mind. They're really important in the list. Now, you still need bodies, obviously. You have to have units to challenge your opponent's units, but These cards are really important, specifically in this, the Freljord version, because we don't have some of those other tools. Again, other regions might have things like single combat, and we'll get to those later in the week, but these are important. All right, so next up, I'm running Aspiring Chronomancer. This was actually Rock Hopper for a long time because I wanted additional ways to get vulnerable, but I'm really losing my luster. I'm losing my faith. I'm losing my confidence in poor Rock Hopper. Every time I've played it, he's just not felt very good to me. He's very easy for folks to play around, and in the current meta, when there's a lot of units that will create additional units, it's the second unit, even though it doesn't feel like it should be. It's the second unit that ends up getting vulnerable. So what I mean by that is if you play a Dune Keeper, the ephemeral unit is what gets vulnerable from a Rock Hopper. If you play Fading Icon, Prey gets the vulnerable. And so there's just too many ways to make Rock Hopper feel like a generic 3-1. So I've cut him. Aspiring Chronomancer, however, lets us smooth out our draws. It has 3 health, so it survives Avalanche and Blighted Ravine, which are kind of a big deal in the current meta. And that 3 health is nice because we need things with a big back end, so we get value trades out of our challenges, out of our vulnerable granting cards, so that this can run into something, potentially survive, and then continue to threaten or continue to trade with other units. So I have switched from Rock Hopper to Chronomancer in this list. Ruthless Predator, same thing as Exhaust, gives us ways to challenge things, also is a nice +2/+0 for threatening damage on our Overwhelm units. Ruthless Raider, Overwhelm, kind of a big deal when you're challenging a bunch of stuff. Starlit Seer, this is in many ways the same as Chronomancer. This is a 2/3, something we want, and it's going to buff up your other units, your big finishers, kind of gradually. We're not running like a ton of spells. You can see here only 13 spells, but even if you play this and you get a +1/+1 out of it, a +2/+2 out of it, that's enough. Troll Champ, this is one of the few ways we have to keep our units alive in this list, and it's just too good in any sort of combat-centric Freljord deck to not include. All right, Xenotype Researchers. This is a flex spot, and I'm playing Researchers because they're the more fun version. Partially I'm playing it because I am also running Chronomancer, so it increases your chances of finding the things that are granted +3/+3. I also like to run it because if you play this and it lands on something like Ruin Runner, you can just accidentally win the game if you draw it in the next 2 turns and drop this thing on 5. Most decks just don't have great ways to deal with the 9/7 Overwhelm Spell Shield on turn 5. So I'm running that for the high roll potential. If you want a more consistent build, you could run something like Avaros and Trapper here because it's going to make the Yeti. Concept is still the same. It's a generic 3/3 that gives you upside in your deck, except for Trapper here gives you his upside guaranteed in the top 3 cards, whereas Researchers is wherever it lands in your deck. So that's a preference thing. I like the Researchers because they're a bit fun. At 4, we have Sand Spinner, again granting vulnerable, helps you control combat, and then Renekton, so that we can pressure with Overwhelm. Renekton is like I know we have Ruthless Raider down here, but Renekton is like the start of where we start listing our finishers and the entire point of this deck. So we've got Renekton with Overwhelm, a 1-of on Rite of Negation to bail you out of things, but then we have Ruin Runner, again with Overwhelm, also Spell Shield, like this card's outstanding. We have Sejuani doing double duty here, both with Overwhelm and with the granting of Vulnerable and Frostbite, so this helps you do everything we're trying to do in this deck. It lets you control the field, grants vulnerable, blah blah blah. And then also Ancient Yeti, big body with Overwhelm, and then 3 Battle Furies as your finishers. So early on, you're trying to use these like 2/3 bodies and your challenging options to kind of keep the board under control. And then once you hit round 4, you're kind of hitting the mid game, right? And so you want to be playing your Renektons, your Runners, your Sejes, your Yetis. Again, Yeti's technically a 4-drop if it starts in your opening hand. And then you, again, if you still have any left over for these vulnerable effects, are then using it to have your Overwhelm units run things over, and then that threatens damage to the Nexus. So pretty straightforward, but It's a lot of fun. It is very satisfying, specifically when you battle fury something, or again, if you researchers onto a ruin runner and you can play it on curve, it is salt inducing, we'll say that. So that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. I hope you're looking forward to Croc Week, because I know I am. And as always, until next time, may you walk on warm sands.